Okay, we're doing the Holy Grail of Wisdom quotes by me, Pete Rogers, going in alphabetical order. The main person today is going to be Ben Franklin, but a couple introductory quotes. First from Anatole, France, the French writer, lived 1844 to 1924. He said, if 1,000,000 people say a foolish thing, it is still a foolish thing. And I would say that's a very important point to get, and it goes back to like the research of Solomon Asch. He found that if you take one person and you bring them into a room with, let's say, 10 or 12 Confederates, and they all say like the short line is longer than the long line, like the vast majority of people will just go with whatever the crowd says. They will conform. They will cave in. Okay? And what I'm saying is you want to be the kind of person who doesn't cave. And it requires, that's why a lot of times really smart people are kind of cantankerous, kind of antisocial. They don't give a rat's tail about conforming to the group. And I would even say it's good to be stuck up. I'm stuck up. Okay, I consider the average person to be a half-retarded moron, functionally illiterate. Okay, I'm several standard deviations, multiple standard deviations smarter than that. So why would I care what the average person does? The average person destroys themselves. I don't think they're anything to be emulated. So what I'm trying to say is it's good to be a little bit stuck up, have high standards. I wouldn't do that. I'm better than that. It's good to be that way. That keeps you out of trouble. You say to yourself, well, if all you dumb shits want to go get drunk and, damage your brain cells, go ahead. You want to smoke marijuana or something? You guys are stupid. You're a bunch of losers. Go ahead. I don't want to do that. So you should say, I have higher expectations for myself. But most people just want to go with the crowd. That's what they're happy with. Okay, like my ex-wife, she's like, whatever's normal is what you should do. Whereas I have contempt for normal. Okay, normal means mediocre, crappy. I want what's best for me, what's best for the moment. Anyways, simple as that sounds, that's a big thing in life. Okay, here's Anatole, France, continuing. The faculty of doubting is rare among men. A few choice spirits have potential for this. Even they need training. Okay, and if 1,000,000 people say a foolish thing, it's still a foolish thing. That's a lot like St. Augustine would say, if wrong is wrong, even if everyone is doing it. Right is right, even if no one is doing it. Yeah, and that's a good thing about Christianity. It says, do the right thing. Don't worry about what the crowd does. You do the right thing. The only thing that matters is a relationship with God. And it's good to be that way. You become a much stronger person. Okay, Anatole, France. The more you say, the less they remember. And there's a lot of truth in that too. You have to just make your point and let it go at that. And as Oscar Wilde used to say, he who exhausts the subject exhausts the audience. Okay. Anatole, France. The goal of teaching is to awaken people's curiosity. It is enough to open minds. Do not overload them. Put there just a spark. If they are ready, it will catch fire. Yeah, there's truth in that, but at the same time, too, like if I get invited to go somewhere, Chef AJ or some other channel, I want to give the best lecture I can in the time that I have. And my attitude is, look, on the internet, you can watch the video over. You can play it again slow, whatever you want. But, I make a lot of shorter videos on my own channel. But, I'm kind of trying to get some unique, good information in there. I don't want to just repeat what's been said 100 times overall. Okay, I've had a lot of nice things said to me when I interview at places. They say, you bring new information. You don't just repeat the same old stuff. And that's what I try to do. I try to bring new, good information. If I thought it was just the same old stuff, I'd be bored myself. Okay, Anatole, France. Never lend books, for no one ever returns them. The only books I have in my library are the books that other people have lent me. Okay, that was good. Okay, next is Dian, Fossey. She lived from 1932 to 1985. She became famous for her book. I think it was made into a movie, Gorillas in the Midst. It was banned from schools because she wrote about a scene where the gorillas master you-know-what, then bait and related topics. Okay, and I'm thinking that would be the perfect book to have freshmen read in high school. Instead of reading Julius Caesar, they're not ready for it, Great Expectorations, or some other book that they don't like, makes them miserable, Mockingbird or something they hate. Have them read Gorillas in the Mist. They will joke about this forever. They'll remember the book, okay? They're not going to remember anything else from those other books. They're not ready for them. And I would say offer, the real way to get kids to read is let them choose the books. I posted that before, that 6th grade teacher who just let the kids choose from a whole bunch of books on a bookshelf in her classroom. They read an average of 43 books a year versus with a regular class, you're pulling teeth to force them to read 2 books a year because then it's an obligation rather than a pleasure. When you choose a book yourself, you make a prediction about what's in it and you look forward to it. You anticipate it. It's enjoyable. It's an adventure. Dian Fossey said, I feel more comfortable with gorillas than with people. Okay, a little crazy. And the other one's a little crazy too. The chimpanzee lady, Jane Goodall. You start looking at some of her stuff. Last time I heard her, she's like another one of those pop, you know what, then to control it. Okay. All right, now we're going to get to the highlight of tonight's little session. And here's a picture of a painting of Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin's bells. Apparently he was very popular with the ladies, and he wrote some funny things about the ladies, but he was a very rico suave charmer. Not the best looking guy in the world, but he had a great life. Man, was he kind of an amazing guy. His biography is very entertaining to read. What I like about it was, he grew up kind of poor, and he wanted to make the most of himself. So he spent a lot of time trying to train himself, to educate himself, how to learn how to write well, and he wrote a lot of, under a pseudonym, he wrote a lot of letters and whatnot to his brother's newspaper. I think it was like Constance Do-Good or something like that. Another thing, too, is why did children in the 1800s hate Ben Franklin? And the reason is because they were forced to memorize so many of his sayings. His biography is one of the best biographies I ever read. And a lot of things I liked about it. Number one, how he developed himself. Number two, how he developed himself, not only as a writer, but also his social skills. Number three, how he got rich by the time he's 38 years of age, so he can then focus on his hobbies. I wish I had done that. I screwed up in that sense. I just assumed my wife wanted what I did, my ex-wife now, out of marriage, a big happy family. We all lived together and let me run the show in terms of the money and some things like that. But no. My wife's a doctor. I think sometimes it's better for a doctor to not marry a doctor because they try to compete. No, she couldn't compete with me in any way, okay? So it just created a fuss, and it ended up being a waste of money, and it was stupid. But that's all I wanted was a big happy family. Anyways, enough about that. Ben Franklin's biography is one of the best you'll ever read. Self-made man, made a fortune. I like the way he writes in a playful tone. He's a good writer. He once wrote an essay on advice to a young man on the choice of a mistress. He said, "So covering all above with a basket, and regarding only what is below the girdle, it is impossible of two women to know an old one from a young one. As all cats are gray in the dark, and the pleasure of corporal enjoyment with an old woman is at least equal and frequently superior." So he says it's good to have a mistress that's older than you. Now, I don't know about that. My girlfriend's actually a lot younger than me. But be that as it may, it's interesting to hear what Ben has to say. Here he is talking about their conversation. Because the older women have more knowledge of the world and their minds are better stored with observation, their conversation is more improving and more lastingly agreeable. I think the big difference is if a woman's postmenopausal, she can't get pregnant. That's a big difference. That's a big deal. Anyways, essays like this one by Ben Franklin and the one by Dian Fossey could motivate high school students to start reading again. Yeah, if you let kids read stuff like this, they'd be laughing and joking about that. They would talk about it between themselves. They would care about it rather than they never talk. I never discussed my freshman reading. The freshman reading in a public school is designed to make sure the kid never wants to read again. I never can recall a single conversation about those books, like an enjoyable, pleasant conversation about those books with my other students. It's designed to be that way. Okay, we're almost done here with Ben Franklin. He's got a couple good sayings coming up. Okay, be frugal and be free. Yeah, there's some good advice in that. If you would know the value of money, go try to borrow some. Good advice. For he that goes a-borrowing goes a-sorrowing. For the best return on your money, pour your purse into your head. Yeah, I kind of had that feeling because I knew my ex-wife. She had threatened to divorce me several times, like during our first or second year of marriage. And I'm like, is she going to divorce me? Crap, And so that was why, initially I was like a typical young married guy. I was reading all about the stock market and investments and all this other stuff. And I'm like, oh, shit, she might divorce me. So I lost all interest in the stock market and all that other stuff. What's the point? It's all going to get wasted and messed up in a divorce. So I completely lost all interest in that. And then I said, you know what? I'm just going to educate myself as much as possible. Whatever come what may. I had two different specialties I could work in. And I really enjoyed reading for pleasure. And I also sensed that someday I was going to be a writer. And so I was reading constantly. I was teaching myself other languages. I really enjoyed all that reading. My wife came up to me one day. I'm in the kitchen and I was reading a joke book or something. She's like, "Why are you reading a joke book? Why don't you go moonlight and make more money for this family?" I was already making a lot of money. I made like about 5 times as much as she did, just for a little perspective. Okay, and I'm like, "Yeah, right. So you can divorce me and then I got to pay you double alimony? Thank you. I think I'll enjoy my joke book." I used to have a collection of thousands and thousands of jokes. That was back in the 1990s, and back then you could really joke a lot. You know, we remember from the 1980s, you had Eddie Murphy and Rodney Dangerfield and all those funny comedians. Okay, it was like the funniest decade of movies, 1980s. Chris Farley, Chris Rock, okay, and they were funny. Dice Clay, okay, yeah, they're vulgar, they're sometimes inappropriate, fine. But you could joke. And then they started really wanting to feminize America, late 1990s, 2000s. And then you could never joke about anything else. It was like Puritanism, the Puritanism of anal sex is like what happened in the 1990s, okay? Nothing was funny anymore. You're not allowed to say anything or you're a jerk. But anyways, so I could never do anything with all those jokes, but I had many thousands and thousands. I just collected them. I read like any joke book, I would read it, take all the best jokes, summarize them in my collection of jokes. Because I'd been a little socially awkward in college, and then I figured reading all these quotes and reading all these jokes, I'd become less socially awkward. And it's actually true. I could rattle out. I could remember a comedian's routine from start to finish, an hour-long one, and I used to make my friends laugh. We used to have a lot of fun with that. But anyways, and then I made files on the computer. I kept all my jokes, everything about diabetes, hypertension, all this other stuff. Anyways, then you know the story from there. Okay, Ben Franklin. He will cheat without scruple who can without fear. Yeah, there has to be checks and balances, especially like on rulers. Otherwise, they'll just do unbelievable things. All you got to do is study the Roman emperors, and you'll see that is the case. Ben Franklin, he says, if a man empties his purse into his head, no one can take that away from him. An investment in knowledge always pays the best interest. I think it makes life a lot more fun, makes you more educated. Something to talk about, something to do. I always have something to do, and that also keeps me out of trouble. I always want to write a new book chapter, make a new video, study a new topic. I'll have some smart friends that want me to look up something about mitochondria or something, and that keeps me busy, keeps me entertained, and I'm happy. Okay, Ben Franklin. Make yourself a sheep and the wolves will eat you. Yeah, that's true. You don't want to be wimpy and weak. It's another big benefit of being articulate is that people are less likely to mess with you because they know you could throw the insult right back at them. That's a good thing to have going for you. You don't want to do that habitually, but you want to know how to do it. Whosoever would overthrow liberty must begin by subduing the freeness of speech. Yeah, all this censorship stuff became a lot bigger after the year 2000. America started really going down after the year 2000. It was a much better country in the 1980s. That was the best decade. I could talk to my friends from whatever ethnic group they were or whatever, and we would just laugh and joke. We love all that stuff. We had fun. We'd make each other laugh. It used to be that way even in medicine. Medicine started getting real feminized and wimpified after the year 2000. Okay. Ben Franklin continues, do good to thy friend to keep him, and to thy enemy to gain him. Yeah, a lot of times if somebody's your enemy, it depends why they're your enemy. Sometimes it's because of some event, and you can kind of get over that. That's reversible. Sometimes people just hate you for who you are. They hate you for being good. They hate you because they're jealous of you. You really can't fix that. All you can do is be polite and avoid them. Sometimes they have hurt feelings about something, and then just be nice to them, and it might take 10, 15 years, but it'll eventually go away. Ben Franklin, hide not your talents. They were made, they were for use made. What is a sundial in the shade? Yeah, it's like that's what pisses me off in medicine. They just want you to be a cookie cutter assembly line worker. Shut up and generate your billing codes. So that gets boring. It's so much more fun to be on the internet, making YouTube videos and reading whatever's a new thing, and it's way more fun. I just wish I could make money doing this. I'd love to be a concierge doc, something like that. I'd love to work at a place like True North or something, but I wish it was close to me. It's too darn far. California's so far. Anyways, let's see. Ben Franklin continues. Small minds talk about people. Average minds talk about things. Great minds talk about ideas. That's true. I know my real smart friends, we talk about ideas. Ben Franklin, if everyone is thinking alike, then no one is thinking. If you would persuade, you must appeal to interest rather than intellect. Yeah, I think that's funny. That's totally true. Yeah. Ben Franklin, you will find the key to success under the alarm clock. It is best to keep your eyes wide open before marriage and then half shut afterwards. That's good advice, true. Be careful who you get involved with, but once you're married, you just want it to work, and that's easier said than done. Both people have to want it to work. All it takes is one person that wants to break it apart. About 80% of divorces are filed by women because they come out of divorce court a lot better than the guy does. And what I've seen of men is, men, they make a deal and say, we'll stick with the deal. Women constantly, the impression I got like from my ex-wife is she always wanted more. She always wanted more. And believe me, I gave her millions and millions of dollars. She was never satisfied. She was always pissed off and wanted more. And there was I realized after a while, what the hell else could I do? You got a magnificent house. All the kids are healthy. All the bills are paid. There's no real problems. What more do you want? There's nothing else I could do. Anyways, let's see. Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Let thy discontents be thy secrets. If the world knows them, 'twill despise thee and increase them. Yeah, you don't. Okay, remember not to say the right thing. Remember not only to say the right thing in the right place, but far more difficult is to leave unsaid the wrong thing at the tempting moment. Yeah, that takes a lot of self-control. I'm better at it now than I used to be, but it's still not always easy. Personality mellows out when you become a vegetarian or a vegan. But yeah, that takes a lot of skill. And a lot of times it's, how you feel about the person. First of all, for your own sake, you got to control your mouth. But also how you feel about the person. There's a lot of times when people I like, I could have said a lot more, but I just want to be nice. It's more important to be nice than it is to be accurate in a lot of social situations. Ben Franklin, speak not but that which may benefit others or yourself. A man in passion rides a mad horse. Yeah, guys, especially when they're in love, they get crazy. They'll do stupid stuff because they're in love with a girl and they'll embarrass themselves. Okay, Ben Franklin, the learned fool writes his nonsense in better language than the unlearned, but it is still nonsense. Yeah, like medical textbooks. They're a joke. He who spits in the wind spits in his own face. Yeah, you don't make progress by complaining about stupid stuff or annoying people for no reason. Ben Franklin, although I fell far short of perfection, the perfection I was ambitious to obtain, the endeavor made me a happier man. People who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Good advice. The borrower is a slave to the lender. I think it's kind of like Chappelle said, the comedian, he's very funny. He said a guy could be happy living in a cardboard box. The reason why he buys a house or a nice car is to impress women. We really don't need much a guy. About all I need, is kind of like what Cicero used to say. All I need is a library and a garden, and I'm pretty happy. But for the girlfriend, you got to get her a nice house or a nice apartment. Everything's got to be nice, nice, nice. They're expensive. They all are. Okay. Ben Franklin continues. For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. And for want of a horse, the rider was lost, being overtaken and slain. All for the want of a horseshoe nail. My kingdom for a horse. That's a good one. Get your act together. Ben Franklin, setting too good of an example is a kind of slander seldom forgiven. Yep. People like competence, but they don't like super competence, and especially not in intellectual pursuits. Ben Franklin, he is the best physician who knows the worthlessness of most medications. Yes. Kind of like Voltaire there. Voltaire said, the physician amuses the patient while nature heals him. Okay, another one. I got one more, Ben Franklin. Dost thou love life? Then do not squander time, for that's the stuff that life is made of. Yeah, you want to be really good with your time. Take a piece of paper every 30-minute interval and make sure, are you getting the most out of every possible minute of your day? If you're trying to achieve stuff, And I've written a lot about that, how you get the most out of your time if you want to do big academic things like write books or whatever. You got to be really efficient with time. But anyways, that's it for Ben Franklin. I hope that was interesting.